We can now bring in Éléonore Caroit, a French Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank
What
you.
is the situation currently on the ground? Are things starting to improve?
Well, yes. Well, thank you for having me. And first of all, I would like to express my total solidarity for all of those that have been displaced, that are returning to their homes, but also for the firefighters. It's been a terrible fire season for France. The situation is stabilizing. We have many fires. The Ministry of Interior said it. This is unseen
Yeah,
as of the amounts, also the hectares that have been burned.
yeah.
But right now, the fires that are ongoing are stabilized. This does not mean that they have been stopped, but they're not progressing as much as we would expect them to progress. And some of them are under control. The one in Gironde is still not completely under control, but it has stabilized. The issue is the adverse weather conditions, and sometimes the winds are created by the fires themselves, and so it makes them very difficult to control.
But the fact that today we've had 84,000 fire evacuees who've been allowed to return back to their homes, so are things taking a turn for the better?
They seem like they are taking a turn for the better, but it is still too soon to say. We're at the beginning of the season, of summer
Unfortunately, yeah,
season,
yeah.
unfortunately. We're seeing that the condition last night was a bit better and that some fires were stabilized. My main message to all of those that are seeing us today, and in particular those that are abroad and looking into coming to France for their vacation, is really look at the news very closely because the situation evolves. And so it's very important to see region by region and even in a more granular way whether it is safe or not. And this is the case in Gironde.
Because this is what I wanted to ask you next. That this area is a tourist-heavy region. We know Bordeaux for the wines, of course, internationally. Should international travelers who are planning trips to the region be looking elsewhere in France?
No, this is precisely what I wanted to stress, is that it really depends on where your vacation is planned. And this is why we're being so cautious and so prudent, because our main concern is, of course, to protect everyone, protect and save people's lives. So this is why we've had massive evacuations. Many of them were preventive, but you have to be preventive in these situations. But the information that we're providing, in particular to tourists, is extremely precise. So if you're planning to go to a region, wine tasting region that has not been affected, that is not under surveillance, then you should not postpone your trip. You really have to look carefully because most of the country is, of course, fine and happy to welcome tourists from everywhere.
Now, the government has defended its response to the blazes. We had the interior minister who spoke just the other day. We know fires happen every year. Yes, there's arson, but also climate change. Was France adequately prepared?
It's very difficult to answer to this question, in particular when you see the images that we're seeing. What I can tell you is pure facts. The fact that we have one of the strongest preparedness in terms of engines, aircrafts, people that have been trained. Is that enough? Well, clearly it isn't when you see this magnitude, but we've increased it. We've actually doubled our means, material, and in terms of firefighters over the past years. What is interesting, though, is that because we're part of the European Union and because we're part of this European civil protection mechanism, we're also able to call for help and receive that help really quickly. And I want to also take this opportunity to thank all the countries that have offered their help and that are right now in the grounds with the French fire workers helping deal with these fires.
So did that help from Europe come quickly enough and to the scale France needed?
Well, absolutely. It did come really quickly. And not only from Europe, we also have other countries that are
Turkey as
offering,
well.
yes, Turkey as well. We have Qatar that is offering their help. We have many, many countries that have expressed this solidarity. And this, as a minister in charge of global partnerships, I have to say, we respond and we are very, we show our solidarity to the countries when they need it in most areas of the world. And we're seeing this solidarity been, responded back to us. And it is really, really positive. And we feel extremely grateful for the response we've seen throughout the world.
Firefighters in southwestern France were battling the blazes with extremely high temperatures yesterday, nearing 40 degrees Celsius. Yesterday in Paris, it was close to 38 degrees Celsius. I know President Emmanuel Macron has just a couple of months left in his mandate, but clearly climate change is becoming a bigger and bigger problem for this country. Does the government plan on tackling climate change properly or leaving it for the next government, kicking the can down the road?
What's interesting about the question is, climate change is not something for one country to address. Climate change is something that we need to address collectively. France has been extremely vocal when it comes to climate diplomacy, and we've been leading in terms of, protection of oceans. And why is this relevant when we talk about forests? Because, well, climate is regulated by the carbon that is captured by the ocean. So you have to protect the forest as much as you need to protect the ocean. We've also been extremely vocal in the application of the Paris Accords. We've been extremely vocal in, maintaining the climate goals for the World Bank. But you can't do it alone. And this is why it's extremely important that other countries also feel that this is happening. Whether we are able to respond within our country, this is another question. We've adapted our livelihoods, and this, of course, takes a lot of time. But it needs to be addressed as what it is. It's a global issue. And in this sense, it needs
I understand it needs to be dealt with collectively, but unfortunately, the world's largest polluter, the United States, the Donald Trump is all about drill, baby, drill.
And this is why it's so important to tell people, even in the United States and throughout the world, those that are watching us right now, is that climate change is a reality and that it happens everywhere. It's not just something that happens in small islands that are exposed to the rise of sea levels. It's not only something that happens far away from home. It's something that can happen at home, and it's something that you can address only if you address it collectively. So in France, we're doing a lot to particularly be less dependent upon fossil energy. We have nuclear energy. We're working towards renewable. But again, if we do it alone, it's not going to prevent these type of situations from happening.
I know the question of air conditioning here in France has unfortunately become political. The far right wants air conditioning. The far left says, no, we can do without it. But if we look at June's heat wave, we had 5,700 excess deaths here in France. This has clearly become a public health issue. I'm curious, are conversations taking place within the government on what place air conditioning should have here in France?
Not only the conversations are taking place, but measures are being put in place. And the Minister for Health, Stéphanie Rist, was able to make an announcement as to the climatization of hospitals, of elderly houses, and so forth. And we're taking it extremely seriously.
What about transport?
And transport, you have it in metros, buses, not everywhere. But, we're not a tropical country. Countries, I grew up in a tropical countries in the Caribbean.
I grew up in the Middle East, and it was fine to go outside because we had air conditioning. Because we had air conditioning.
And here, when you look at, the image behind us, Paris, of course, is not adapted to these types of climate changes and temperatures, and we're adapting it, and it takes time, and it's massive investments. And I think this conversation is an important one to have. But it is not the conversation that we need to be having if we want to address the root causes of why we have 40 degrees in Paris in July, and why this is not a normal temperature, and why the temperatures are rising because of human activity. And in a time when you have world leaders that are trying to deny that this is made by human activity, and that denying also the impact it has, I think climate diplomacy is essential, and we'll continue to do that.
I should hope so. Thank you, Éléonore, for coming in and speaking with us on the program today. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much.